Okay, so conceptually, I agree with like everything you say, but my situation is that, you know, I've kind of left a lot of my material stuff behind, um, and I kind of seek this life that you speak of, but every step I take, I'm always thinking about the next step. So it was like, I'm going to leave everything behind and I'm going to come to India and I'm going to, practice yoga and meditation, and I'm going to, you know, be in beauty and climb mountains and just kind of try to live this wholesome spiritual life without the material things. But then now that I'm here, I'm constantly thinking about, okay, so I have to do this in order to get there, in order to get there, in order to get there. And now that I'm in India, it's not about visualizing what I'm doing in India, it's about visualizing what I'm going to do after I'm in India. So how do I stop this cycle of always thinking about, what's next, and just enjoy the present and where I am now and accept who I am now, as opposed to feel that if I acquire more skills or become my own master, then at that point I will be happy, because it seems like a never-ending cycle.
What's your name, please?
Devin.
Devin.
Yeah.
Devin, a man felt burdened with kilos and grams. With kilograms and grams. The kilos were a few, the grams were numerous. To make it more concrete, the kilos were 4 and the grams were 40. The fellow dropped 40 of them. 40 grams. But he missed out on dropping the 4 kilos. And now he says that I've dropped so much and I still feel heavy. Why does he feel heavy when he has dropped so many of them? Because he dropped the ones that were easy to drop. The real weight he didn't quite drop. You have dropped this and that, but have you dropped your belief that you know what is good for you? That is the one central belief that does not allow man to live freely and fully. I will be my own master. My intellect will decide my next step. If you keep thinking about what you need to do next, if coming to India or planning your sojourn through India is all happening via the intellectual route, then what have you dropped? If you still haven't dropped your misplaced belief in your power to take care of yourself, that's what hurts man most. His notion that he knows best what will serve him. He lets his intellect be his master. Take an example. You will come to know what we value more and what is it that we'll be very reluctant to drop. If I say you are poor, and if I say you are a moron, what would hurt you more? Please. If I say you are poor versus I say you are a moron, what would hurt you more? Being called a? Please, being called a moron. And that tells you what you are more attached to. You're not attached to your material belongings. You are more attached to your intellect. And that is why when you are called a moron, You can't take it. Tell a man he looks ugly, he will just feel offended. But tell him that he is stupid and crazy, and he might just get at your throat. It is our intellect that we take as our most valuable asset. It is our intellect that we are most identified with. Unless you have dropped that identification, what have you dropped? You have only dropped the grams. You haven't yet dropped the kilos. Drop the kilos.
So like I've like read books on exactly what you're saying intellectually, like you say. I agree with what you're saying. So what I've decided is to come and practice meditation because that's the best answer to being present.
No,
So do you have
no.
a quick fix answer that I can?
The quick fix answer is that even at this moment you are mistaken. Who is agreeing? Your intellect is agreeing. And you
Right.
are saying, I am agreeing. And by saying that you are agreeing, you are doing a disservice to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you are really listening to a teacher, you don't agree. You just listen. If you are agreeing, then you have reserved the power to disagree as well. If you can agree, then tomorrow you may disagree as well. You are still taking yourself as your best teacher. I will decide whether or not I need to listen to someone. If I agree, it's good. And if I disagree, then the fellow is not right for me. Are you then listening to me or are you then listening to yourself? Please, yourself.
So then how can you assess who to listen to? Somebody walks in a room.
Don't assess at all.
Just
Just
listen to
listen.
everything that everyone says.
Yes,
accept it
because
as the
listening
truth, and
is
it
not
should
the
be.
same as acceptance. You do not yet know the power of listening. Listening does not mean automatic or mechanical acceptance. Listening means wisdom. And if you do not listen, how will you know that the speaker is false? If you agree or disagree, then you have already shut the doors. You just listen, and listening does it for you. Let listening be your master, not your notions.
So
Just be there.
So just accept everything said to you as the truth.
Not accept. Didn't I just say that listening is not? What is listening? That is so very subtle and imperceivable that you are unable to ride on top of it. And the intellect has a deep need to be on top of everything. It is very insecure. That is why my answer is a threat to you. And you are saying, how do I just accept what anybody is saying? You don't have to accept. You accept when you agree. And I'm asking you to not to agree. I'm saying never accept and never reject. Just listen. This listening is a very, very strange thing. It is not a thing at all. Just listen. Doesn't matter what you are listening to. Be all ears, be all eyes. India has said that when you are all eyes, then you discover that there is an eye beyond the two eyes. Be all eyes. Just see. Just without effort, without agreement, without judgment, without anything. This is the state that you need to be in more often. Open, but not conclusive. Open without knowing what you are open to. It is a state of vulnerability, and we are very afraid of this state. If we want to open our doors, we need to be sure of the person who is knocking at the door. We don't want to open the doors for everybody. We feel scared. Open the doors and trust that the door has its own sentience. The door won't let everybody in. Get down from the position of being of your own master. Unless you step down from the throne, you will find that you are letting the servant rule the kingdom, and there is only destruction everywhere. Agreement and disagreement belong to one plane. Understanding is a different sky altogether. If you agree, you haven't understood. If you disagree, you have again not understood. Don't scratch your head. It's not there. It's somewhere else. Huh? One doesn't reach there riding on the intellect.
So you should think less. Is that it?
You should think as much as you want to, but you should think about matters that can be thought of. You cannot be a subject of thought. Think about the cup and the coffee. Don't think about yourself. Don't think about freedom and truth and love and God. Think about the camera. Think about the tripod. Think about the structure. Think about the stars and the suns and the galaxies and the atoms. Go ahead and think about them. Be very scientific in your thought. Explore, experiment. But don't think about that which is not material. By thinking about that which is not in the domain of the senses,
So don't think about other people as well. But
yes, yes,
thinking
yes.
about yourself is the worst.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, you can think about your body, your mind. Don't think about the self.
Ego.
You can think about the ego. The ego is very much material. That which can be related to the material is just material. Isn't ego related to the material? If I have more material, my ego gets inflated. And only the material can have a relation with material. So ego too is material. So think about the ego, but don't think about the self. Keep that aside. When you think about the ego, say it is the ego. Don't say it is the self. When you think about the body, say I'm thinking about the material body. Don't say that I'm thinking about myself. Keep the self aside.
What is the self?
Why do you want to think about it? If you could ask this
So I could
question.
differentiate it from the ego, so I know what I can think about and what I shouldn't
Yes,
think
of course.
about.
All that you know is the ego. All that you know is your troubles and your life and your money and your body and your relationships. Why don't you rather think about them? And if you think deeply about them, maybe you'll be able to see a few things. But instead, you waste the energy of thought over inconsequential things. You think about freedom. When you start thinking about freedom, you have unnecessarily distanced yourself from freedom. There are certain things that are not things at all, and they must not hence be thought of. Think about bondage. Bondage is a thing, freedom is not a thing. So please think about your bondage, and you are neck deep in bondage. Instead of thinking about bondage, what do you have? You have great lectures on the blossoming that is freedom. And nobody is asking you to be honest and direct and acknowledge the fact of slavery and bondage.
So to get specific, I think when he's asking a bit like for an example, so is the self it's okay to think about your ego as a way to move forward and kind of learn something and ask those questions.
No,
No,
no.
but can I get to the point? So, is thinking about the self, thinking about how good looking you are, thinking about what is an example of the self?
Looking at the ego is not a way of moving forward. Looking at the ego is hard work.
Yeah,
The moment you look at the ego and you accept that you are suffering a lot because of this little thing, then you have to take the pains to get rid of your current situation. And that is why we do not want to look at the ego. We do not want to look at bondages. We want to avoid suffering. We want to avoid taking tough decisions. The fact is, by avoiding the right kind of suffering, you are immortalizing the wrong kind of suffering. See, if you fight for freedom, there is pain. And if you do not fight for freedom, even then you stay in pain. Choose the right kind of pain. We choose the wrong kind of pain. There is trouble for Jesus and there is trouble for Judas. What kind of trouble would you rather have? Both are troubled. Please see. Choose your trouble wisely. Escaping trouble is not possible. If you are born human, you have to conquer a few things. You have to fight it out. You will have to get into the war. Just ask yourself, which side am I in this war? The war is there. We cannot wish it away. There is strife, there is conflict. Man must fight. The question is, for what are you fighting? For freedom or for your own bondage? Most people fight to support their chains. It is such a stupid fight. Most people work very, very hard to maintain the status quo. And the status quo is imprisonment. We work very hard to build prisons for ourselves. Is that wise? Why do you work so hard?
aspect. So, I feel with my job and stuff, like, yes, it's stressful and it pisses me off most of the time. But to be honest, I like the fact that it engages me, and I make biomedical devices, so I feel like whatever the product of it is good. But what you're talking about seems to be kind of like almost removed. Like, can you be doing a job that is, yes, it's a chain, it's a burden, and it's a pain in the ass and stresses you out, and still be present and stuff like that as well? Like, with one remove from the other. I don't know. Most people, I think you can say this, but they're never going to move away from those chains, and maybe they should. But in the real world, people need to earn money. People need to feed families. People need to, there's practical consideration.
All that is all right. The question still is, what is more important? We are not saying that you must not earn or feed your family. It is not an either or situation where there is either freedom or food. The question is, what comes first, food or freedom? Then the matter is settled. If food comes first, then go ahead and sell everything else for the sake of food.
There's some very good food around here, right?
If you are sure that food comes first, why are you troubled? Sell everything for the sake of food. But you know very well that it's a bad deal. Food cannot come first. Unfortunately, food cannot come first, not for a human being. Not even for an animal, perhaps. If you keep an animal chained and keep feeding it nice food, the animal won't settle with that. Probably it would. Who knows? There are birds that get attached to their cages. Even if you now open the door of the cage, they won't fly away. We are not talking of anybody and everybody and all birds. We are talking of the bird called you. What do you value? If you value food, then the matter is closed. But if you value freedom, then let freedom decide where your food would come from. It's not as if those who live a life of freedom do not get food and starve. Let freedom decide where your morsel would come from. And rest assured, there have been hundreds and thousands who have lived freely and yet not starved.
How do you decide what freedom is without intellectualizing it?
You decide freedom by being true to your experience. If you are suffering, then you are not free.
But how do you decide if you're suffering without having...
You don't like it,
without
simple.
But how do you decide if you like it without thinking it?
Your head is heavy. If you have a headache, do you need to think that you have a headache?
Yes.
Seriously?
Yeah. If I didn't think I had a headache, I wouldn't know to do something about it.
It's not so. Look at your daily life. He is there. If he pinches you hard from the behind.
If I didn't think someone's pinching me hard from behind, I'd say, what the hell is going on? Why does this hurt?
You won't take a split second to react to him. Thought needs time. If you are pinched hard from behind, you would quickly react. Where is thought? Suffering doesn't need thought really.
It does if you're used to suffering your whole life. Then how do you separate suffering from what's not suffering if you're so used to suffering?
That's a more tricky question. The question is, what if one is so accustomed to suffering that he has now termed suffering as his natural or normal state? What to do then? You would still keep feeling an inner restlessness. You may consciously tell yourself that everything is all right with you. But when you would look at the sky and look at the flight of the bird, something would stir inside you. You would not know what it is, but you would feel uneasy. That unease is the proof that life is not yet all right. When you look at the river, or when you will look at a wandering monk, suddenly something would strike you, and all your life's earnings and all your intellectual structures would start shaking. And you would know that your intellectual structures are not resting on a firm foundation. Just the sight of a bird or a fish or a river or a monk was enough to shake you up. And if you are not shaken up by anything, relax, chill. Why unnecessarily invite trouble by going to a guru or reading a scripture? If you are feeling totally alright, stay alright and relax.
What if you feel like 90% right?
There is nothing called 90%. You cannot say, I am 90% free of cancer. Even if 10% of that lump remains, the stuff is still cancerous. It's not a matter of quantity alone.
So once we know there is some uneasiness, so then when we need to encounter that what wrong is going on, we'll need to use our thoughts, right? Or how would we actually get to the
Use
point?
thoughts. Who's saying not to use thoughts?
Yeah.
Use thought to look at that which can be thought of. So use thought to look at body, look at ego. Don't use thought to determine or define freedom. Think about your bondages, think about your life, your job, your relationship, whatever can be thought of, but don't think about love. Yes, you might think about lovelessness, which is all right. The trouble is, if you think about love, you will be successful in defining love. If you think hard enough, you will come up with a definition of love. And that definition is bound to be incomplete. Now, even if it's incomplete, you have it in your hands. And what will you do next? You will bring up something that conforms to your personal definition, and you will start calling it love. And then you will convince yourself that you have found love.
Is there something higher than thought? Like thinking? Like a way to, I don't know, move through the world with something higher than thought?
In the last 1 hour, have you been continuously thinking?
I mean, listening.
Not, right? And when you have not been thinking, what is it that was happening on its own? That is called understanding. Even thought happens for the sake of understanding. You do not want to be perpetually thinking. You think so that the matter can be closed, right? You think about a problem. Do you want to continue thinking? Or do you want to come to a solution? So, higher than thought is a state of solution, a state of dissolution, dissolution of thought itself. That dissolution is called by the name of bodh, understanding, pragyan, so many names are there. Thought is a medium, a useful medium. Apply it where it is applicable. Keep it in its right place, and then it is beneficial. Think when it is necessary. If you do not think when you must think, then it's foolish. And if you think when you must not think, it's even more foolish.
But this seems like a perpetual machine. It's not in control. So, like, how do we actually, even in controlling, we'll use our head and we'll use a thought process. Now to say to use it here and not use here, we'll again use thoughts. So this is
Now there are two possibilities. Either the machine is badly designed, blame God, or the operator of the machine is unskilled. Which possibility do you want to talk of?
the operator.
The operator. Who is the operator?
I,
You. The mind is a servant. You are making the servant do what it cannot do. The mind cannot fetch you peace. And what are you making the mind do? Run after peace, run after truth, run after fulfillment. You do not tell the mind, go and get me fulfillment. But what do you tell it? You tell it, go and get me money, which in turn will get me fulfillment. Now the servant cannot take this task, so the servant goes mad. You are overloading the servant. The mind has limited capacities. Ask the mind to do what the mind can do. Tell the mind to go into the atom and it can go there. Tell the mind to chase the stars and it can do that. But if you tell the mind to get you love, the mind cannot do that. And entire humanity is busy pushing the mind to do impossible things. That is why the mind has gone totally bonkers. It's a mad machine now.
So would you say that the understanding that you speak about precedes thought? So thought comes after and tries to rationalize the understanding.
Understanding is nothing, so how can you rationalize it? Understanding simply means dissolution of the matter. Understanding means the thing does not exist. The matter is closed. It's gone. Away. So what is left to rationalize? Understanding is both before and after thought. It is also the base of thought. But if you have wandered away from understanding, sometimes you need the help of thought to come back to understanding. What is the utility of thought? Good thought helps you cut through bad thought. That is the utility of thought. In fact, good thought is that, only that, which helps you see the fallacy of thought. Good thought helps you lose confidence in the power of thought. That is good thought.
Is what you're saying not just a thought? Are these not your thoughts?
I do not really know what I am saying. I cannot even say that these are not thoughts. I hear what you just said to me, and I also heard what I said to you. I heard both of them equally. I can make no comment on what I am saying. I am at a distance from it.